Hi everyone, welcome to Varta and welcome to Likhawat at Varta. Likhawat is a regular authors panel that we run online every month at Peerbagh, but we are very lucky that we are here in person for the very first time and we have incredible writers and authors with us. Right next to my side is Manan Verma, who is a super whiz kid and has 9 books and is a best-selling author and also a publisher. Here out of Dehradrun, close to Dehradrun, Haridwar. So he's very local and an incredible person to talk to and speak with as well. Next to him is Vidya, who has the greatest energy. She's been on one of the Likhawat panels in the US. That's where she lives, and I'm so grateful that she's here all the way from the Carolinas. It's just as hot, I guess.
I think it's hotter here.
It's hotter here. Yeah. I couldn't say that because Texas is definitely hotter. So, she's a children's book author. She just published a recent book, and she also is a creative writing coach, a parenting coach. We'll probably talk about conscious parenting, which I need to learn a lot of myself. So, welcome, Vidya.
Thank you.
And right next to Vidya, I have Mohit Khanduri, who is a teacher and also a poet. Mohit's books are also here, displayed here. He's also local to Uttarakhand. As everyone knows, Varta is a festival we are doing in Uttarakhand for the first time. So this is a way for us to connect with local authors and bring them to this platform and speak with them. The theme today for our topic, really to speak of, is about the positive impact of stories. We've heard, since the function began, lots of people have talked about stories they have been inspired with, or folk stories. And they kind of thought about the influences they've had in their lives as they've heard them. And this is a very interesting group to talk this topic about, and I wanted to bring them together. I'll start with Manan because he's written tons of self-help books. And I always was curious that how did he choose that topic, because it's a very positive topic and very connected to our themes, that how do stories transform into something super positive and how do they make it happen. So Manan, talk to us about your journey. How did you begin in this space?
Yeah, so if I talk about the journey began actually 4 years back. And as you asked, why did I decide these topics, decision making? So if you look into my books, there is 13 people, right? So when you start, the first thing which I looking is there is a waiting. Waiting is not the right option. So first you have to remove waiting from your life, right? You have to learn how to take actions, stop waiting. Then you have to force the confidence, unbeatable confidence, that is the second book. And so on you go to you decide. When you're quit waiting and you have the confidence, right, take action. Then you need to make decisions. So that's where decision making comes in, you decide. Then there is action, attraction, reimagine. Goals, sets and goals, action, attraction. In which you need to use the law of attraction to attract all of this, right? So all the themes are interconnected. Right? One after the other, reader can read it. Right? So the main inspiration was to change the world, because books can basically read message, right? With publishing and online courses I did earlier, I reached 10,000 students with my online courses. So that's a limited area. But books, it stand the test of time. For hundreds of years, they will be accessible, right? So that's why, I wanted to get into self-help. And that's why I started writing.
That's amazing, but it also makes me feel very old, honestly. Because I wish I had this vision. When I was as young as he is and as, incredible, it's not about age, obviously, I don't want to call that out too much, but it's so nice to have that feeling of wanting to change the world. And I hope that no matter how old we are, whether we are 3 or 20 or 40 or 60, we can all still feel that way. And I think, the themes that Manan talked about are interconnected. And, for young kids here, like the college kids, I guess that's the kind of motivation they sometimes need to move forward. And interesting, just because you're so young and you've done this, that you're thinking already that way. And Vidya, you write for much younger kids.
I do.
So what do you keep in mind? How do you sort of, that stories are powerful. What are you keeping in mind when you're bringing it to paper? What's going through your mind?
Whether it's writing for kids or teaching, my goal is to make it fun, filter it down, make it fun so that they can read. Because children naturally come with a very good heart. But, and they already know a lot of things. They just know what is right and what is wrong. And they have so much compassion and empathy already.
Yeah.
But if we have to give them certain tools, make it fun and interesting for them, that is what I try to do. The whole, that is my approach.
Yeah, and Vidya's current book, The Adventures of Winnie and Bo, has a very strong message. For those who haven't read it, I would welcome you to look her up, and we'll share links afterwards to share this panel live. But it has a strong message, but it is said in a way, it's an illustrated story. It's said in a fun and a light way, but it still makes the point that kids sort of will absorb. And I have Mohit right next to you, who talks about compassion in poetry in a different form though. So what's going in your mind when is it something that just comes to you? A lot of poets are like that, or are you consistently thinking कि आप मुझे बहुत कुछ positive लिखना है and I should focus on that? आपका क्या approach है?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for calling me here. And when it comes to poetry, most of the time I write poetry. But I also write short fiction. I also working on a novel. So there are so many ideas coming, and being a teacher, it's really hard to give time to my writing work. But I try to maintain that balance between my writing work and teaching. And when I write poetry, poetry is not like fiction. Like you need to isolate yourself and think a lot about your character, thought, and everything. But poetry is suddenly, it's like it comes suddenly to you. It's like it knocks your door and then you open your door, which is your heart, right? Then you open the door and your hands just, they just go down. You don't know what's happening with you and write. I've written like 70, 80 lines continuously within 2 or 3 minutes. So that's what happens with poetry. It comes to you. You don't, write it. And when, poetry is, I think, more close to my heart than fiction, because for me, poetry is an expression where, I can pen down those thoughts which are deep there in my unconsciousness level, and I try to, write those things which I feel that I'm not able to talk to people or share, to people, whether it's my intellectual thoughts or, it's emotional thoughts.
Yeah.
And, you write everything, but if you are in distress or you are very happy, and you don't have anyone, or you don't feel that you are not going to tell everyone, but then you think that pen is mightier than a sword.
Yeah.
So you use that tool as a weapon to write down your thoughts. So I think poetry is something closer to human hearts, as we all know that Mahabharata, Ramayana, those texts were written in couplets. So poetry is, I say like poetry is more close to human civilization. That but today's people are not prone to read fiction. So in that case, I try to, because I have taught university students at Branch University. So I try to talk to them and try to feel that that foster that deep sense of love for poetry, so they can read great literary giants as well as they are emerging poets. That is what I try to do.
It's very special what you said. I just was reminded when you were saying that you open the door. It's a very beautiful expression, and I have an expression that I like to think about when I get an idea. There's a very, very famous Kashmiri poet called Vidya Murlidhar, and she was like the king's chief consort, and she would write poetry, and she was not educated, but she would sing it. And so she had a statement she would make that meaning that it just comes from me like a spring. And so she would say that, and because people would tell her, she was in that time where women were not writers, and they would tell her this is not your job, like you need to do something different. And she still kept writing poetry because that's how she expressed herself. And as you were talking, I was also thinking that the idea that we can express ourselves in words is very powerful, and lots of people struggle with that. Like I've often said this to people that I've been blogging for like 20 years, more than that, and to me that is my therapy because that helps me process my thoughts.
I agree with that.
I mean, how it is, right? It's sort of you take it out of your psyche. So is that something that is that a part of why you guys write? Like now, this is the negative question. Yeah.
I think writing has been an anchor for me throughout so many difficult times. That brings, when I write, it gives me clarity. Otherwise, thoughts just floating in my head, all getting muddled down, and I'm confusing emotions. There's so much chaos.
Yeah.
But when I write, I kind of, maybe it gives me a different perspective, like a third person perspective when I put things down. So that is one of the main reasons I write, and it's very healing according to me. And that's what I want to do for kids too. And that's why I tell parents, it's not about their vocabulary, it's not even about them becoming published authors later. It's just about them being able to process their emotions. So just let them. There is no right, there is no wrong. But it's just, I think, such a powerful tool, writing, and not utilized at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because so far we only see writing as a means to an end. Like you write maybe for an essay to do and to give an exam or
Yeah.
whatever. There's always, or resume or something. There's always something, but for it to just be healing
Yeah.
and just allow it, no agenda.
Yeah.
I think that's what I want parents to know for children.
Yeah, so this reminds me, actually, I'm going to bring this to Manan because we had a really interesting project that I wanted to talk about, like an agenda-less project on my lab. So, Manan, I know, but before I get to your project, I want to talk about the fact that you've published from a very young age and you've been writing, obviously. So, and you have best-selling books. Were there any reviews you were hearing from people who were relating to it? Because, when we see someone young and like them who's writing, it's a different kind of like you're like, oh wow, this person wrote this and they have a different connection and a reaction. Have you heard that, like similar to what Vidya was saying?
Yeah, actually, my books are mainly based, if you look in the market, there are a lot of self-help books available, right? But if you can read them, you can read them. I also read them.
Yeah.
But the language is typical, not for students, right? Not for the 20-year-old regular. So I wrote for them. And when they bought my book, some of them texted me on Instagram, along like 2 years back.
Yeah.
And they were telling me that this is a self-help book they can relate to. Because the language is simple, the ideas are based, so the 20-year-old can act on them.
Yeah.
Rather than, make a plan for your life, it's like make a plan for tomorrow. It's simple.
Yeah.
But the 20-year-old can act that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have heard reviews from students, numerous students,
Yeah.
which I can share with you, but that is for later. So yeah, they review and they told me that these are the books they can relate with.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the series I wrote in,
Yeah.
like Wait Late, it didn't sell much.
Yeah.
That was my first book. Then I learned how to sell it because you can write if
Yeah.
you will agree. But selling is a totally different matter. It's a different game.
Yeah, but that should
Yeah.
not stop people from
Exactly.
writing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You don't have to write to become a publisher.
Exactly.
You can just write.
So-
But yeah, it is a completely different ballgame.
It's very interesting because you are both saying exactly what all authors will say, that the writing is like what comes naturally and selling is a whole different
Yeah.
ballgame. So I'm going to come to Mohit because I know you write poetry, and as you were describing, people now do read fiction. I don't know if when that changed, but I know that poetry, sometimes a publisher will tell you it's harder to sell simply because people are not buying poetry. And so I know that your book is in writing,
Yeah.
and it's a hard thing.
It's but sorry.
Yeah, but so I mean, what do you do to keep yourself motivated, or what are you doing different? Because to me, it's an interesting question.
Well, the sad part is that people don't believe in that you are going to earn through writing. So people don't really motivate you.
Yeah.
So I think for me, poetry is like saving. It saves me from death or from that frustrating thoughts. Sometimes I contemplate suicide, and most of the time, poetry is something which holds my hand beautifully and takes me to a better place, which is like coming out of that zone of where we all get alienated. And that's why I think that poetry needs to be taught to young children.
Yeah.
That poetry is more close to your heart. And we all can write. It's not about quality. It's about writing. But you start writing. Like if I give you an example, personal example, back in 2020 and 2021. During the COVID period, I wrote more than 500 poems
Wow.
in 2 years period. And I also edited my this first collection, 21 poems and Song of India's Spirit. So I edited like 21 poems in these 2 years. So it was very tough work for me to edit those poems continuously. Even after submitting that manuscript to my publisher, I rejected it and I edited it again and again. So it's a long process. That's why I couldn't publish my poems because I've been writing my poems since I guess 6th or 7th standard. But I haven't published that. But because I was editing them, being a poet and being a writer, it's very difficult to give your final approval for your work. So you always find those limitations and then think, okay, this is what not going to do it for me. And that is why it's a sad part that, as I said, people don't really motivate. You have to motivate yourself that art is not going to give you any money.
Yeah.
That's what I don't write for money because for that I need to do a job which I'm doing. I'm a teacher. But poetry is that which gives solace to me. And as one of the great writers said that if death is, we all fear from death. So art is something. Like we all artists say that art is something which takes away that fear of death from you, and gives you something which is better than the life, because life gives ultimately, life gives us more pain than the death. So that's what I try to do.
It's funny because I'm a great reminder of like Steve Jobs, and he's not my greatest and my most favorite guy. Steve told him. He said, if you start thinking that you might die tomorrow, you'll probably not fear today. So it's a flip side of what you said, because I feel that everyone is eventually going to die, but it's very important to remember that stories outlast us, and so the work that you guys are doing and the motivation you bring into your work is going to outlast all of us, right? And that's why I personally like books, because they have such longevity and they inspire people, even though we don't know them, we don't meet them, and we may not even be there, but we are still getting inspired.
And another thing of us, I feel that we are such islands otherwise. No? Each person thinks, oh, only they have a problem, or only this is this. Only I'm struggling with this. But when you read stories of people who have gone through something similar, it connects you. Right? You feel the connection, and then you feel that it's not just pain. I think that when you read a well-written story with a lot of heart in it, you are able to empathize and you feel the connection to the writer. I have a lot of readers coming and telling me that I feel like you wrote my story. I think I'm writing my experience. They relate to it, and then you feel connected. You feel like you belong. So I think that is so powerful.
So I know that we've spoken for a few minutes. So as a reader of your work, very interested in asking you questions about whether you have projects. I know one of Manan's projects I want to ask you, because as a publisher, Manan, like you work with young people, you write for them. I know that you have a plan to publish lots of books. So I want you to tell us what that project is. And then I'm going to go one by one, and you guys tell us what your next projects are that we can look forward to.
So on my personal side, my 9 books are coming up. So they are based in single life topics like love or inspiration or motivation, time. Name of the book will be time, and we'll discuss about time. So that's on my personal side. And 9 books are coming up. But the project we're talking about is basically Project Uprise. So like you said, we're writing for kids, right? But kids can also write. So I felt that when I was writing my first book, I didn't really got a platform. So
Exactly. That's what I need to make it Manan, because I want my students to
Exactly. So I went to self-publishers and they were charging me, of course. It is a charge to publish. So I paid it anyhow, but I didn't get any money of it. Investing 25,000 rupees and didn't make any back. So I thought one day, why don't we go to school and then we publish a book for the school. And the students can participate in it. So that's called Project Uprise. And from Uttarakhand, we are publishing 75 school books this year. So it can contain poetry or any stories. The students wants to write, and any number of students can participate. So we have already completed 20 schools. Their books are published globally. Right?
Nice.
We are funding the whole publishing thing. So it's free for the schools. And the main goal behind this, so we will publish basically 3,000 young authors this year for free. So the goal is to promote them and promote, of course, Uttarakhand authors, globally, and young talent of India. Later on, we are planning to take this, all over India. Maybe, for abroad.
I love this initiative. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because young people sometimes feel they can't do it because they don't have a role model or they don't have a platform.
They don't have a platform, I think, because that is because I've been struggling. Like I put their stories on my blogs. But I wanted to have a wider reach because they write beautifully.
There's a lot of hidden talent.
And there's so much. They all want to say something.
Exactly.
They want to have a voice, and we need to.
They get diverse voices, right? Okay, Vidya, what is coming up?
My next project, I want to do something for little kids. I want to have 2 in my mind now. I started writing.
Okay.
So one is for little children. There's so much of anxiety in the world. So much of mental health issues. So not very little children, but somewhere like when they just begin to understand their pains. To write a book for them on how to handle anxiety. And they don't have to. People don't have to suffer the way we do. It's unnecessary. So that is one. Another is I do want to write a fantasy novel for teens, for young adults. But that's going to be a long
project. It's the kind of project where you have to think a lot about characters, because fantasy is complex, right? I love it, but it's complex. I know. What about you?
Okay, so for me, the recent there is a book. There's a poetry book in Hindi language. It's called Amrithara. So it will be published by Writers Ground Publications, New Delhi based anyway. So there will be 30 poems in that book, and poetry is in the form of a memoir. So where I have written a poem since my there is a poem which I wrote back in 9th standard, and then it follows that the order from 9th standard, and then there are some poetry which I wrote in college time, and after that when I started working, and now back in 2021. So this kind of memoir and a journey of a poet. It's more about a journey of a poet and how he develops the quality of his poems, and how he discovers himself through nature, through people, through love. That is what my next poetry is about.
I don't know how many people read Hindi. I love reading Hindi, so it's like my hidden talent. I have it in my, I heard in an airplane with non-Hindi speaking people, and they say, "What are you reading?" And I said, "Oh, I enjoy it." Even though my Hindi is not half as good to write, but I definitely enjoy it as a reader.
I think
it's a very deep language. Yeah, it's very hard to get that. Even though I'm like a primarily English writer, I'll say it's very hard. You don't get that there.
We all are from English literature backgrounds. But I try to study Hindi till I guess till it's standard. After that I took Sanskrit and I did that standard. So my Hindi is not as good as others, but I try to read a lot Hindi writers, poets, and then I have written very good Hindi poetry. If you will read my poetry, you will get to know that yes, I have done something better than others. So that's it.
Okay, this is the most interesting group of people with all these positive ideas. I was telling Vidya earlier that when you have CM inaugurating a function, there are so many protocols that my head was buzzing in the morning. So I really needed to have this kind of a conversation because it helps you center yourself to know why you're doing the work you are. And Peerbagh, which is the organization that does Likhawat panels, my main of bringing these kinds of people to everyone is so that they feel inspired, whether they are poets or self-help writers or children's book writers. All of us have a writer within us, and I'm hoping that when people hear you and they see your work, they will be inspired to check it out, and also that they will be inspired to do something of their own. So I appreciate you guys spending time being here, and I hope to continue to stay connected with you. I love this group.
I just want to say one more thing.
Yes, please do.
I think this is like the perfect place to say it because a lot of people are asking me because of AI. Why should my children, write?
Oh God, you're asking the AI jam right now. I can't remember how much ChatGPT I have used to test.
That's okay. That's okay. But what I tell parents is that what AI cannot do is, what writing primarily does is help you understand yourself. Right? Which AI can. You just tell it a topic, it's going to write and you can send it for whatever you want to. But it's really not going to help you discover yourself.
And I would 100% be in agreement with that. Plus, I think if anyone is using AI, it doesn't work in multiple languages. So in the depth we were just talking about Hindi, whatever other language they're using. I think we have experiences that AI just doesn't know. So I feel whatever is coming from within you is very hard to be replaced.
It cannot be replaced.
So I am definitely of the belief that
he said you have to open the doors to your
Exactly. So definitely on that, definitely feel that we have a long way to go before I have an AI, I don't know, whatever that's called, a robot writing for me. So again, thank you guys. It was so great to meet you, and hopefully we'll stay connected.